Hi, this is Johnny Lee doing a deck profile and also kind of just a quick lesson for the Card Guyz YouTube channel. So I placed top 32 at the ARG Circuit Series Championship in Philadelphia last weekend. It's a back-to-back top for me, and this time I play Joshua Schmidt's Performapal deck instead of the Monarch Burning Abyss deck that I played the week before at Orlando, where I placed top 8. The reason that I chose this deck is because just in my self-practicing, I would open up in like 2 simulators and kind of test against myself, and I found that I just couldn't beat myself playing the Pendulum deck. So I figured if the Pendulum deck were becoming increasingly popular, which I think it was since Jeremy won Orlando with it, that meant that I was going to have a harder and harder time, and I just didn't like the idea of 50-50 matchups. So I decided to kind of take a risk and play a deck off theory alone, and I say that in the sense that I actually didn't get a chance to practice with it. I did a lot of solitaire, but the first actual game that I played was in fact the first game of day 1 of the tournament. So yeah, I'm just glad that theory alone was sufficient for this. I don't recommend approaching the game like that, but I was just so busy with work that obviously I can't take many Yu-Gi-Oh cards out at work, so I only had time to simulate against myself. So I'll go ahead and go into the deck profile really quickly. And because Joshua has used the same main deck and done a very thorough deck profile before, I won't go too much into it. So we just have this very small Magicianspecter engine. We have a small Performapal engine. We have the hybrid engine of Performapal Odd Eyes. And then we have the Odd Eyes engine, which is just 3 Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon. And then lastly, just this small Magician engine. And it's not that the engine itself is particularly amazing, but I just don't think there is another engine in the card pool just yet that is a sufficient replacement. So these are almost just like blank scale 8 and scale 2 monsters. So I don't know, maybe Metal Foes can take its place. We'll have to see. But they're not amazing. Magical Abductor. Obviously, if you resolve it turn 1, you can basically win. 2 Arching Eccentric. Effect Veiler, you play to 1 because your opening hands, if they're decent, they can search this. 1 Apex Avian. Don't want to run more because it's a brick, and I side it out a lot. Sky Iris and Terraforming. This card's very, very crucial. Basically, if I don't see this in a game, the chances of me winning just drop down drastically. Actually, I lost round 1 to Burning Abyss Infernoids of all decks, but it actually wasn't so much the deck that beat me. It was just me just not drawing Sky Iris or Terraforming in both games that I played, unfortunately. 2 MST. So a card recently came out in the Dark Illusions that's like MST except it vanishes, and that card is looking really good for the current meta. So I might switch it to that card, but the only advantage that MST has right now that actually does come up is that MST can pop your own scales to help you kind of like free up space as well as add counters for Abductor. So I'm not sure which function is more important right now, whether MST your own scales or using the new card to banish your opponents like Cosmo Towns, in Fog Blades, etc. So we'll have to see. We'll take some testing. Odd Eyes Fusion, you get sided out every matchup that you go first against, and it also just gets sided out against a variety of decks. But it's very powerful. There is a way to open 2 Vortex Dragons with it on turn 1 if you tribute the Absolute Dragon for the fusion material of Odd Eyes Fusion. 1 Ignite Reload. So I guess an important thing to keep in mind if you are to play this deck is that after resolving Ignite Reload, you cannot draw any more cards by card effects. So you can't Lizard Draw after activating Reload. So keep that in mind because I did mess up in the side event game when I did not side out Lizard Draw and accidentally tried to do that. And then went up Star Goblin. So that's the main deck. For the extra deck, I made a few changes to Joshua's extra deck list, but for the most part it's still the same. So we have Grand Pulse, we have Totem Bird. I changed 2 Dweller to 1 Dweller since over in Europe they don't have the Utopia the Lightning, so I went ahead and added that, which functions very similarly to Dweller and in a lot of cases is much better. So Majester, I didn't summon it once all tournament, which might sound like a surprise, but it actually doesn't come up very often. because a very good hand you typically want to end on Blind Dweller, even if you don't know what your opponent's playing, with Effective Ailer in hand. Usually not on a Blind Magister. This is more if you're facing against Pendulum or something like that. Castell, Copy Operative. Copy Operative is very, very important. So this deck's win condition is attacking for game in one turn. Actually, not just one turn, and not even just one battle phase, but actually with one attack. You want to do 8,000 damage in one attack, and Copy Operative very much facilitates that. Dark Rebellion Dragon. Utopia Lightning. Again, Europe doesn't have this, so this was the main change I made to Joshua's extra deck. Utopia Beyond, which is like Copy Operative, it's just to set up your turn in such a way that you finish the game in one single attack with On Ice Pendulum Dragon. This red as Flame Metal Dragon, it won me a game against VA in top 32. It's just a good way to kind of end the game once you're in the late game and you're going slow on life points, but still high on resources. Absolute Dragon, Rebellion Dragon, this is just to send with with the fusion spell and 2 Vortex Dragons. And there is a way, like I said, to summon both of these turn 1. If you can search the fusion and you can summon 2 level 7s, then you tribute off Arise Absolute Dragon with fusion spell, which will summon this with the fusion spell and summon this with Absolute Dragon, so you can have the double Vortex. It's very rare, but it's just a play that you want to be able to have at your arsenal. And then lastly, the side deck. In the side deck, I consulted with Joshua because at the time that he topped Euros, the Blue Eyes deck was not yet in existence, but now it is, and I wanted to kind of identify what the best solutions to it might be for a Pendulum deck, and the conclusion that we came to was that the Sticky String Kaiju would be a very excellent answer to that. And the reason is because it's not level 8 like Gameciel, it's level 7, which means that they cannot XYZ summon with it if you give it to them. And also, because it's level 7, it has synergy with your own deck. When you Pendulum summon with On Ice Dragon, you can overlay them for Absolute Dragon, so there's synergy there. So that was kind of the main thing to our approach as far as how to address the Blue Eyes deck. But for the most part, it's a very easy matchup because it's so difficult for them to get started. And as far as the rest of the side deck, I maxed out on Ghost Ogre because again, the reason I changed from NBA to Pendulum for that one weekend is because I thought Pendulum would be very popular. And I faced 3, so it actually was very popular, and I wanted to have just a very good answer to him. And Ghost Ogre, I like that it doesn't target the way Typhoon does, so I thought that was a very strong advantage. And also, as you know, Ghost Ogre can destroy monsters, which that doesn't come up very often, but when it does, it can be very clutch. Actually, on the bubble, round 9, game 3, this was the game that determined whether I or my friend Dan Cunningham would top. He went first, and he summoned Summoner Monk. And I activated this turn 1 on his Summoner Monk's effect, the effect that turns it to defense mode, and it just cut off his normal summon in his play for the turn, and from there I was able to take the game and top the event. So it was just very clutch. Denko Sekka is for just demise decks. Kaiku is for EDM. So against EDM, you just simply side out Odd Eyes Fusion into MST for 2 Kaiku and a Secret Village of Spellcasters. It's a very simple side, but it's very crucial because EDM is pretty much the most important deck to beat. It's like the gold standard as far as when you're trying to innovate a deck or when you're practicing. You need to be able to consistently beat EDM. I think it sets the standard as far as power levels this format. The 2 Maxi, they also come in against Blue Eyes with Kaiju, and they come in against Burning Abyss, of course. One of the problems of a very diverse format like the current one is that you cannot side adequately for every matchup because there are just so many decks. So I wish I could side 3, but I just cannot find room. But I would side a 3rd Maxi for Burning Abyss. 2 Twin Twister for Burning Abyss and Demise, Secret Village for EDM, and also for going to first against Pendulums that do not play Magispecters, and for going first against Domain Monarch. And lastly, MST, just for very many number of matchups. I think I would change to 3 Twister after losing to a 5% no out to Fragrance in top 32, which was very unfortunate. But so hopefully by playing more outs to Fragrance, I'll be able to stand a better chance against very terrible odds in the future against BA. So now that I've gone over the contents of the deck, I just wanted to now kind of discuss the philosophy behind why I chose this deck. And I'll go ahead and show just like a little thing I've written down in my notebook. So when I last did a deck profile for after my Orlando finish, I talked about the 4 dimensions when it comes to succeeding at Yu-Gi-Oh! Basically, four kind of broad categories to keep in mind that you want to focus on as you prepare for an event. And those 4 categories are listed right here. They are your play, which is typical play; their play, which is how you mind game your opponent into making the wrong plays; your strategy, which is your deck choice; and their strategy, which is metagame. So I'm going to take this first category, your play, technical play, and break it down even further into the topic of resources. 3 types of resources that we play with when we play Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic or many other trading card games. This philosophy, it carries over to many different games, so it's something that you can kind of keep with you and apply to other forms of competition. So in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! You can win in a number of ways. You can deck out your opponent, you can take your opponent's life points down to 0, you can win by life and time, you can have Exodia, have its victory condition applied. There are many ways, many strategies that we use to win, but I would argue that those kinds of win conditions are not necessarily the most functional / effective way to think about winning, because although they are different, they are mostly cosmetic for the most part. But actually, if you think about winning the game in terms of winning via one of 3 different resources, I think that is a much more practical way of thinking that applies to all I guess decks. Because what if in the future Konami releases a new strategy that has a new victory condition, maybe not like Exodia, but something similar that says if blank happens, you win the duel. Well, we can't just keep adding on more and more victory conditions to the list of ways to win Yu-Gi-Oh! But if we keep it to just these 3 broad categories, no matter what they release, we will always have this unchanging standard and framework for how to win a game. So those 3 resources are cards, which is card advantage; tempo, which is how in control of the board you are; and fire, which is just winning by killing your opponent right away before cards or tempo can kind of come into play. And so, as far as the reason I chose this deck for the championship is because I felt this deck was just very dominant and very excellent at all 3 types of resource management, and it's just very effective in the way that it can win at all 3 games. So in terms of card advantage, it searches, it pluses, all these cards add cards to your hand. Pendulum has a lot of card advantage, and of course the mechanic of Pendulum Summoning in itself is an inherent solo charge that you can do every single turn, so you can build enormous card advantage. You can also win by tempo, by simply controlling the board, because Kirin, which is the most unfair defensive card in the deck, just lets you naturally control the board with core engine without having to run bad traps or defensive cards. So I like that this deck also had a lot of tempo control. And then perhaps most unexpectedly about this deck, especially compared to other Pendulum decks, is that this deck is also massively competent at the resource management of fire. And what I mean by that is Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon, along with the effect of Performapal Odd Eyes Unicorn, attacks per game for over 8,000 damage, and not just in fringe situations, but in fact it does so game after game after game. And I cannot tell you, because I've lost count of how many rounds I won, because I simply attacked for 8,000 with one attack twice, game 1 and game 2. And so because this deck can just kind of sneak in that one attack so quickly, it wins at the philosophy of fire as well, which is just to burn your opponent for game before cards or tempo can come up and come into play. So basically at any stage of the game, whether it's your first turn that you're able to attack, where you sneak in that one attack per game, or a very, very long drawn-out game where you need to outlast your opponent's resources. And in both those dimensions, I really loved that Pendulum could fulfill those roles very effectively. Though I do think the deck does have some weaknesses. I lost in Fragrance in top 32, and also Solemn Strike was a huge pain. Apart from the one game I lost round 1, where I spent 2 games without Sky Iris and lost to that. Besides bricking, basically, the only other times I lost was because of Solemn. And normally you can play around Solemn, but sometimes you just do not have a choice at all. So that's what happened to me for my second loss. So so I guess back row is a bit of a problem, and it's not simply addressed so easily as simply saying, oh, I'll just play more MST or more Twin Twister or something like that, because every additional removal card that's not core engine that you side in. Just makes your main deck that much less consistent. And one of the great strengths about Pendulum is that it's consistent. So as you can see, we have a bit of a paradox, and that's kind of what I think makes the game fun, is that you do have these problems that need solving, and maybe the answer is not so clear, but you just kind of keep pushing on and trying to do your best to solve those problems. And I just want to show you just a little sheet I made. You don't have to necessarily read all the words, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about how I prepared going off theory alone, because as I mentioned before, one of the big challenges for me this event was I had to play this event with a deck that I didn't have time to play any real games with. So what I did was I opened up a simulator and I tested hand after hand after hand, and I would send screenshots to Joshua of my opening hand as well as my ending field, and I would just ask for his commentary, ask him to critique how I played my hand and whether he had any input on how I could end my field better. Just trying to develop shortcuts and habits as quickly as I can in my mind with a simulator, because I didn't have time to play games. And just memorizing things like, I have 12 high scales and 15 low scales. Memorizing things like, how many Performapal monsters, how many Odd Eyes monsters are in my deck, how many Magicians in my deck, so that I don't search for the wrong thing, and make sure that I resolve Sorcerer effectively, etc. And just knowing the standard plays and the standard side in and side out. I made this whole chart of like how to side out and against every matchup, going first and then going second. So my only comment on that is I think there are some events where you just don't have time because of school or because of work or whatever to adequately practice. And during those times, theory is very important, and it's very important that you spend any free moment that you can just kind of like mapping out as best as you can anything that doesn't require you to playtest, whether it's your side out chart, whether it's shortcuts, whether it's combos you need to write out. Just try to do when you can't play physical cards, just spend your time doing what you can preparing in other ways as best as possible. And so lastly, I'll just close this video with just a few shout-outs. First of all, I want to just shout out the Yu-Gi-Oh community. Contrary to popular belief, the new Yu-Gi-Oh movie pack is not referring to the animated movie Dark Side of Dimensions. It is in fact referring to my feature-length 1 hour 30-minute deck profile from Orlando. I kid, of course, but just shout out to the community for watching that video. Those of you who did, I really appreciate those who do enjoy discussing the game and thinking critically about it. It's something that I love to do with all my hobbies, and so it was a pleasure just to share a little bit of my passion with you. And I hope that as I continue to do videos for the card guys, that you guys will follow me along on that journey and continue just enjoying the ride. And I hope that you can learn something from each video that I do. So shout outs to you guys. If I didn't have an audience, then I would be very miserable just keeping all these ideas swimming in my head all to myself. And then I'll just shout out a lot of people, of course. Shout outs to the family, Allison Leverett for being a great mom, Desmond, Ben, Chris, everyone in the room, Jay, Dion. Dion especially for just testing a little bit with me the night before, just helping me work on my reads. We did something kind of called open hand testing, where we test with our hands open, we look at each other's hands, we try to make optimal plays, and doing that really helped me to get a good idea on how to read Solemn, which is very, very important with the Pendulum deck, because if you misread Solemn and you play into it, that can be the end of your game, the end of your tournament right there. So it's very important to do open hand testing and work on your reads. And shout out to the Circle, Patrick, Aben, etc. I also want to thank Johnny Nagel, Paul Cooper, and Aaron Furman for always having cards that I can buy and nice foreign rarity cards. And so if anybody else out there finds me at an event and you have French cards or like high rarity foreign cards that you want to trade to me, just come and hunt me down. And just want to shout out the Houston community. Just thank John Lowry and the store he works at, Strike Zone, and Grant for filming this video, and just everyone else here in Houston, the Texas community. So yeah, just as I kind of just mentioned, just look forward to more shorter videos this time. I'll be doing shorter videos, just teaching mini lessons here and there on Yu-Gi-Oh theory, and hopefully they can help you improve your game, as well as maybe help you think about the world at large in a more critical way. So just look forward to that. And I really appreciate the chance to be able to teach. Teaching is a passion of mine. I did part-time teaching right after I graduated college, and so it's great to be able to just teach about the things that I care about most. And I also just want to shout out everybody else who was at the event, who made it very enjoyable. For Jim for just setting up the event, or having great prizes at ARG. The prices are very, very good. So I really love that. Shout outs to one more person is Ziggy. He gave me a lot of moral support going into the last round. I was feeling nervous, to be honest, and I think my opponent and I both misplayed game one, so we kind of both like stole the game from each other back and forth. But I just want to thank Ziggy for his moral support and for just giving me that confidence boost going into my last round before, while I was on the bubble, the last round of Swiss. So with that, I just wanted to thank all of you again for coming by this channel to view the video, and until next time, guys.